Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Parenting is Easy, Said No Never. I'm your host, Khanani Abraham. We have a really awesome talk today. I'm so excited to be sharing with everyone. Our guest is Maria Perez, who is a coach, and she's based right now in Singapore, although that's not where she's from, but we're going to get more into that. She is also a mom, a friend, health coach, that she likes to call herself an entrepreneur, and is very into health, both personally, physically. She is a national board certified health and well-being coach and holds an international MBA. She works with high achievers experiencing high functional anxiety, helping them transform stress into sustained performance without sacrificing their health. She is also the co-founder of Embers Consulting and Coaching. Her mission, and the company's mission in general, is to inspire professionals in demanding environments to lead with purpose, fostering resilience, increasing stamina and recovery, and protecting their health. I hope you enjoy this episode. Okay, so Maria, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we're in different time zones, so things are just a little bit topsy-turvy. I'm so glad we're finally meeting. The back and forth you and I had for a while, I guess, if I put it out there, it would be a little bit comical in a certain way. But I'm curious, there are so many things that maybe want to reach out to you and have a conversation. But can you give us a little background about who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now?
Sure. So my name is Maria, and I'm originally from Ecuador. And right now I'm in Singapore. So just on the opposite side of the world from you. So my background is in food science. I actually went to university in the US, and through my career journey, I've pivoted into leadership coaching and career coaching because I saw there was a gap in really understanding and motivating middle management. And that brought me traveling all over the world. So then I did my MBA in Spain, and I really got more into coaching and understanding what motivates people. How can you make people grow within whatever field they're in, but become really good at and just, break through their beliefs. And then Parenthood came knocking at my door, and I think that changed things quite a bit. And then that really got me thinking, and then just throw in the mix COVID and really understanding how health is so important. So you have the leadership and career part, which is really important, right, in our lives, but then it comes the aspect of health. So you work so hard in your life for what for? So what are you investing all this time, all those heartbeats for, in the future, you don't have a good health, then it really, there's this gap that I wanted to bridge. And it was how can we reframe stress? And as a parent, I know this is very important for me because I really want to grow old and be very agile, very, very independent, and be there for my kids, for my grandkids, and just really enjoy whatever stage they're in and I'm in. And really, for me, family is very important. So health takes a pillar to a foundation for, as we grow old and we are there for our kids. So I really want to help people understand that and value that.
So, I want to go back to something you were just saying before regarding becoming a parent, or finding out that you're going to become a parent hit in a certain way. But at the same time, you're also starting to build a career. So at what point in your career did that happen, you becoming a parent? And how did that have an impact on whatever career-driven focus that you had that you wanted for yourself? What was that? What was the impact of becoming a parent during that time?
So that's a good question, because at that point of my life, I had already made a transition. I was starting my business, and I thought, I could have it all. I can do it all. I was very much into, I'm going to be an excellent parent. This is new for me, but I'm sure I can handle it. And I'm going to be really successful at starting my business. What happened with this child came with his own agenda. I was planning on working when my daughter had naps. but that didn't work very well because she didn't, they don't have really a schedule. They have their own way of working. And for me, that was, okay, how can I balance this out? So that threw me completely out of balance because my expectations of being a mother and being a business owner were completely um, unrealistic on what was I experimenting. And for me, parenting was something new. So I really had to adjust my expectations. Um, and adjust what was really important for me and what I really wanted to prioritize at that time.
Like, that makes a lot of sense. If you can pinpoint a little bit more over here regarding what that was like for you. Of you're going to school, you're starting a career, and then all of a sudden this amazing thing happens of you becoming a parent, and then there it sort of like turns everything over on its head, and it just makes it like, what's going on over here? So, what was that process like for you, and how were you able to work through that?
So I had like a very structured, prioritizing my work, and I was having a client, and for me, because I was away from home at this point, I was living in the Netherlands, and I didn't have any family close by so that they can take care of my kids or my daughter at that time. And for me, just managing that time by myself and finding time to work and be there for my daughter was very challenging for me. And I felt like I didn't have any support. I didn't have, actually just, I could find a childcare, but my daughter was 1 month old, was very little. And well, they started accepting at 3 months, but when 3 months came, and for me, it was really hard to leave her at childcare for being so little, and not having family around or close friends to really say, okay, I'll, can you look out after my kid for a few hours while I work? That was not really an option for me at that time. So sometimes I would work at night or in the weekends, but then my husband came during the weekends. Like, he had more time with us, right? And because he was commuting to another city in the Netherlands, and so that was our family time. And I really had to put in a balance of okay, what is important for me and how do I want to prioritize? So I think at some point we believe that it's all or nothing. We have that binary
Black and white thinking.
option. Exactly, the black and white thinking, and it's not. And like, over time, I came to realize that it's not about you have it or you don't have it, or you're good as a mom and you sacrifice your career, or you are in your career and you're not very good of a parent. So I think it's just finding that balance that works. And for me, it was a trial and error. I didn't always get it right. And it took me a long time to realize this. It is not a 50-50. It's impossible. And sometimes you really have to focus on work and have less time with your child and be okay with it, because that's a choice. Or you can have more time with your child and, less time at work, and be okay to drop things out of your hands. So I think for me, it was a process of learning what worked for me, because it's not the same for everybody.
For sure. I think it's something that every situation is different. I mean, it's not just regarding where you are in the country or what your family dynamics look like, but I think even what career-wise, or where you are in, not age, but where you are in the world. There's so many different parts to this amazing puzzle called life, that I think it's important to know how to make our own board, and how we have to take ownership of it, and realizing, there is a time and a place for everything. And right now, mommy has to concentrate and do certain things, and daddy's going to take care of you. And right now there are certain things that I'm going to do with my daughter that are going to mean that I'm going to have to sacrifice certain dedications for work, and that's okay. I'm curious if can you talk a little bit more, deeper into that, because the way you said it regarding, so the weekends come, my husband's more around, and he comes home and we want to have family time. And I feel like there's more to that sentence, but yet you're also in your head playing around the different scenarios. And you're saying, well, we have to decide now, what's our priority? Is it going to be family time, or am I going to try to get back on the business? And it sounds like you made certain decisions. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about what was going on internally regarding the back and forth, right? We're saying it's not black and white. Okay, now can you explain that? Can you explain the two sides to that, please? I think it's something that a lot of us can learn to understand what's going on in these different decisions that that we have to make all the time.
For sure. So it's about, okay, then, when the weekend came, somebody was able to take care, like my husband was more around and he was able to take care of my daughter. And so I could have more time. And when I had more time to focus on work, then, I wasn't going to be worried that I had to, I don't know, whatever she needed, be right there at the moment so I could have my own time. But at the end of the day, okay, a few hours is fine. But then when those few hours started to get longer and longer, or I had a client, or I had to work towards that, the work starts to grow. And if you want your business to grow, you also have to put more attention to it. So I don't know, the weekend has, let's say, 24 hours without, that you're awake, or even more. But then for those 30 hours, let's say, if I dedicate, I don't know, 8 hours of those to be with in the business, I'm missing out of the family time for me that was important, because those the only hours that we could have the quality time where we're all awake, where we're all like not tired at the end of the day, and just like managing to get things done, right? So it was like very quality time. So when that, at the beginning, it was fine. That's what I needed. But then when that became to be a little longer, or it became to be more workload, I think it was time to rethink. And for me, I was missing out. I was missing out on the time that was not gonna come back. I wasn't gonna be able to make it back during the week because it was not there. So then I had to drop one of the balls that I was, juggling. And what was important for me at that time, it doesn't mean that was like written on stone, right? It was just in that moment of time that I was able, I had to make this internal dialogue of like, I dropped this ball, but right now I'm going to take the time to, focus and be present with my family.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. And I love how you're talking about that internal dialogue. Something that we talk about here are those internal conversations in a way. And I'm curious regarding the internal dialogue that you've had with what I like to call the internal self-critic regarding like, Maria, you're not doing enough for your business. Maria, you're not doing enough for your daughter. That inner voice that's always telling us that we're doing something wrong. I'm curious if that's something that, you could relate to. And if yes, is that how were you able to make sure that they were kept at bay, they were kept controlled?
So right now it's different because this is the growth that I've been doing as a parent and as a business owner. And what is very important here, and what it has helped me and helped the clients as well, is really separate both. You're not gonna manage a business as a parent, and you're not gonna be with your kids as a business owner, right? It's just really, it doesn't match. So you have these two identities. And we wear many hats in our lives. We are like, we are parents, we're friends, we have our professions, we are
chefs, cleaners.
Yeah, chef, leader. I'm a runner. So we really have to make a distinction between that. And I think that's very important in when you want to find a balance. Because when we're a business owner, in my case, I focus on that and I wear that hat. And I am into it. And I'm not, as a business owner, I'm not thinking, oh, I need to go back at home and cook for my kids, right? I'm thinking of my business and how to make it grow, how to make it work when I'm at home as a parent, I'm not thinking, oh, I think you're telling my kids how to act or like coaching them. I'm being a parent. So I think just doing that division and knowing how do you want to show up for your kids and how do you want to show up for your business is really important, because that takes away the guilt. Of course, we're not machines, right? We're not going to take the feelings and say, this is how I feel as a business owner, this is how I feel as a parent. But it really helps to make that distinction and be in that role when the time comes.
I love how you ask yourself certain questions, and that sort of sets the stage for whatever it is you're dealing with. Like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing now? What's mommy supposed to be doing now? What's mommy supposed to be able to be paying attention for her daughter, but yet also making sure that the worker man's hat is sort of left in the office, right? It could be down the hall, the office, but it's down the hall, and we don't mix the two, and vice versa. And then when you're getting into running or putting on one of your other hats, it's being focused and fully ingrained into that whatever endeavor that is that a person has. And I think that concept is great. And I think even there's a lot of research that talks about when we dress a certain way, it has a lot to do with the performance for that activity that we're actually doing. So on the topic of running, and you talk about, obviously, the first thing that came to mind as you were saying it was a healthy outlet, but at the same time, I also hear you identify in a certain way as I am a runner. So it's obviously a lot more than just a little exercise. So I'm curious if you could talk about that. And you were saying before, we're going to wanting to be there for a very long time for your kids and grandkids. What's that connection between the running and what you do on a probably daily basis, but at the same time also wanting it to be something that's not just about the run, but it's about what the run represents?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it's very important. Like I mentioned, health is like one of the pillars, and exercise. For me, it's something that really helps me move the energy. It's my time for myself. Is the time to just let all the energy out. Just go out there and really enjoy, be in my body, be present. And running is not because I want to be strong, I want to be fit, but this is a time to recharge and to really take care of myself. And this is my me time, and it's not a negotiable, because this is what recharges me. Like, we don't forget to charge our phone every night, right? Or charge it, because what will we do these days without a phone? So that's like exercise for me. It's my way to recharge and fill my cup, because when I have my cup filled up, then I can show up and I be fully present with my kids. I can be more productive at work.
I love that. Can you just talk a little bit more? You said something about non-negotiable. What does that mean, and how do you make sure that it's implemented? And where else do you have that in your life that you would implement something like that?
So the non-negotiables are the things that really will help you fill your cup, that are really important for you. And exercise, it's something that is, rain or shine, it's going to be there. I'm going to make it happen, because that helps me. And it's something that I've practiced throughout my life. And for everybody, their non-negotiable is different. So I have a client that his non-negotiable was in a way to decompress after work, or where, to find his own space, was to go outside, out in his balcony, listen to a podcast and sip on tea. So I think it's important to find that non-negotiable, that thing, that space where you can find yourself, where you can center and ground yourself. And how do you implement that? That's the question. That's the $1 million question, because it's something that you have to be flexible with and adapt and make sure that it's always there, even if it takes you to schedule into your the busy schedule. The thing is that no such thing as no time for a non-negotiable.
No such thing as no time for a non-negotiable. And I guess a big part of that being implemented in a way that is going to be really helpful to whatever situation a person may be in, whether it's at work or at home, is to also realize that there are certain things that might be affected by it. And I'll give an example because it was something that just I think I've been dealing with at home with my kids, and then something that just the way you're talking about it made me think of that example. So if let's say you're having, you need to have your podcast and sipping some tea, and it might go into, let's say, dinner prep. So that might mean that instead of dinner prep being this homemade meatballs with spaghetti, if it might have to be something that's defrosted from the freezer, that's okay, because that means that mom now gets her non-negotiable. And there are things that, yes, I have to feed my child and I have to feed the family, and that's a non-negotiable in many ways. But the level of how I'm going to go about doing things, if I don't do those other things, that exercise, that podcast, that tea, that balcony, which sounds awesome, I think those type of things they need to take precedence, and we need to make sure that that's my number one thing I need to take care of, even if it means some other priorities that I have, and there might be important things, but those things are sort of put to secondary, not on the back burner, but secondary to what it is that I need to do. And sometimes I think the inner self-critic regarding making sure that we're doing the right thing for our family, for our kids, and for our jobs can sort of get in the way of that, of like, oh, I don't know, you really shouldn't be forfeiting on cooking a proper dinner, or you really should be doing, blank with your child before they go to bed because you know you have a non-negotiable, because we do that every night. So how do you personally deal with situations where, yes, you have to get your non-negotiable, but you also want to make sure that there's the aftermath or the repercussions from it that might come about within the home are not going to be affected too much? How do you go about doing that?
I don't think there's like a right answer for this, because I think it's really depends on the person. But I think it's very important is to have flexibility and to adjust your expectations, because you cannot do things always perfectly, right? And I think this is the challenge of balancing. It's like a balancing act. So when you have your non-negotiable and you're going to make sure that this is going to really recharge you, you're going to be your 100%. You're going to show up as the parent that you want. Then if it translate into defrosting something really quick, or just, eating a healthy or like not like a perfectly cooked meal from scratch, but maybe you can order something that is even not as, kind of on the healthy side, then that's okay. Right. So I think it's just giving yourself permission to drop the balls at some time and then make it up on others, and adjust your expectations.
I love that. And I think, that goes to the point you were saying before regarding, let's say, spending the weekend with family. And I think a lot of that has to also with a quality aspect of things and not about the quantity aspect of things. And when we are spending the right quality, and when you're around together with your spouse and your children are around, and it's a weekend where I don't have to have my smartphone on me answering emails 24/7, that does create a certain level of how we're going to be involved in something. And the non-negotiables might look different on a weekend than they would during the week. And I think having that balance, and I think also kids are sticklers for schedule and for structure. And in general, when they know things are supposed to be a certain way, so if mom needs to go out for a run within an hour of her coming home from work, again, just giving an example, then kids adjust to that and they realize, okay, so I can speak to her for a few minutes right when she comes home from work, and I'm going to have to speak to her later because I know she has to go for her run. There's a certain normality that comes about with those non-negotiables, and in that sense over here. I just want to switch gears over here a little bit because, we're talking about, originally from Ecuador, we're in the U.S., Netherlands, now in Singapore. Sounds like some amazing experiences that you've had, and at the same time also not being around family, like you were saying when you gave birth to your daughter. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that, just regarding the being able to have to do the things that you need to do for your family, but you're not having your family around, and what that was like for you. And what would you tell someone that's coming over to you and talk to you about being far away from home, but yet starting a family?
It was very difficult to have a support system there. Because normally, who you call first is your immediately family or friends.
Right?
And even if you're, somebody in your family who is like a couple of hours drive away, they would come, and it would be, easier to organize when you have that system that you can fall back to. It's it really helps. But for me, that we didn't have, since my husband is also from Canada, so neither of us had like this support system. And at that moment, we didn't have close friends that we could really fall back to for support. So it was about, so there's like pros and cons for this, right? Like the pros was like, really, how can you support each other to make it work, to find the time to start a family with no support, and you can support each other, right? It's very difficult, but it's also a really an amazing growth opportunity, because then we really develop this team. It's a teamwork, and that's something that could work for both of us. um, I think it's very important. And then for me, it was also, when you have back home, it would have been easy, to ask for help. But like being in a situation in a country that I didn't know people so well, for me, it was a challenge to ask for help.
Mm.
And sometimes that is tricky, but I think it's important to develop those connections, because at the end of the day, right now in Singapore, we don't have family here. Our family
Mm.
lives 2 days away. But our friends here had become our family, and I've learned to, can you look after my kids? I asked them for help. Can you look after my kids while I go to the doctor? Or really fall back into strengthening those connections. But because at the end of the day, we're social human beings, and we thrive on connections. And whether you have your family close or not, like having that support system is very important. And on the other side is how technology right now is a gift for us, because you know 40, 50 years ago, we didn't have that ability to be far away from family and still feel close in a way that we can talk to our families, have our parents, see our kids growing up, have a interaction. It's not the same as being like next to that person, right? But it really helps a lot to maintain those connections as well.
Oh, for sure. I would even say 20 years ago, Maria. I don't have to go 50, 40, 50 years ago. Even 20 years ago, I think, we didn't have that like we have today. And I think it's very,
Correct.
very cool. And you can, I can speak for my kids getting on almost every night, at least my youngest, and calling his grandparents just to say goodnight. And he may not see them for months at a time, but when he sees them, he's running over in that slow motion run over to them to give them this big hug, because he spoke to them yesterday and he speaks to them every day. And I think that creates a certain connection that obviously it's not the same as being in person. But like you were saying before,
Sure.
there are some silver linings what happened in COVID. I can just imagine what it's like, giving birth and having a baby during that time. And as alone as you felt, having to be isolated mandatorily on top of it, that's like next level of just being alone. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about specifically birth and birthing in places where people don't have family. What are some things that a person can try to do to help the situation? Obviously, there's no substitute when it comes to human beings and having other people around. But I'm curious, to go walk through some of the things that you went through that you were able to do at that time, giving birth and being able to start your family without your family around.
Just having close friends. If you don't have to have like 10, but having one close friend, one close confidant that you can really, ask for help. I think our neighbors were really helpful in that time to even, provide support if some of us needed just, take care after the kids at that time. So it really building that community. I think it's really important and making that effort. And it's not easy at all, but um, having at least one person that you can fall back to, can you really trust? I think it's really helpful. Even in just, to call and go for a coffee or something. I think that for me, that was really helpful. And the second thing was like around the time of giving birth was having support, and I reached out to a doula. I didn't know what a doula was at the moment, and she really helped me. This person that was there holding the space for me, for both of us, for me and my husband, and really walking us through the process and being with us during birth and after, and just walking us through, somebody who's experienced and who can walk us through a system that I was completely new to me, in the Netherlands, where it's much more encouraged to have the home birth and as little time as possible in the hospital if you decide to go to the hospital. So
Mhm.
I think just being in a completely new healthcare system with, um, different language as well. They speak perfect English, but it's like the right, like the cultural, and having somebody to walk me through the process was really helpful.
For sure. And I think just having that relatability to someone else
Yeah.
is really important. And we've had opportunity here on this podcast to talk to a few doulas and birthing coaches. And I think what the biggest thing that I've learned, and you're echoing it now, is that obviously there are things they have to know and that they're trained in and that they can help with. But I think when it comes to the emotional support assistance that they can give, and they're in many ways they might even be responsible for when a person is giving birth. I think that's something that that flows under the bridge a little too fast. It goes under the radar. Like the importance of what a doula can do for a person, and considering your situation where there was so much unknown, there was so much newness, and so much also aloneness that you were dealing with at the time, and you got this person to sort of assist with all of that. And I'm not saying she took the place of the best friend in one day, but at the same time to create a certain level of, Maria, you got this, and this is a beautiful thing, and we're going to figure this out. And I'm curious if you just talk for a minute or two about this home birthing situation. If that's something that you did you look into it, and if that's something that you understood going into it, what was that experience like?
It was really foreign to me, and I was not really a fan of it, because growing in a healthcare system in Ecuador, very similar to the U.S., where first contraction you go to the hospital and you're taken care of, and I think here you really had to wait at home until the last minute, and the uh, the doula was there, but also the obstetrician, will come, and if it was necessary, you would go to the hospital. And so for me, my first daughter, who was born in Rotterdam, we waited 12 hours, and we still, you know, she wasn't even close to being born, so I had to be rushed to the hospital. But in the hospital, I had to, it was a very long birth, and there was people coming in and out, and at the end of the day, like, my daughter was born 2 hours later, said, "You're fine, you can go home. Can I book you a taxi?" And I was really shocked, because I'm not gonna even take a nap, or like, I've been in labor the whole night, like 25 hours even. And they were like, "No, you're good to go home." So I was in complete shock. But
Wow.
the the upside of this is that when you go home, they send you a nurse, and the nurse goes and cooks for you, and so that's the good side. Like, they take care of you. They show you how to, give the baby a bath and how to take care of the kids. So I
Wow.
think it was a completely different thing for me. And so for my second daughter, who was born and then in Amsterdam, then I was like more familiar with the system. I understood a little bit better where they coming from, and okay, and if you cannot stay in the hospital for 3 days or 2 days, then they send you a nurse. So I was more proactive to look for the nurse who would come to my house, and then I went um, to the midwives, and they had like all the facilities to give birth there. So it wasn't necessary to go to the hospital. The hospital was close enough in case something like an emergency happened, but in the end, it sounded more peaceful, to go to the midwives, and they have a water birth, and so I decided to try. I was more comfortable with the whole experience, and at the end, I could really understand where they were coming from and why they were, pushing for or encouraging home birth. So yeah, then I
Well,
wasn't that afraid. And my second daughter was born, and then I went to walk. After 2 hours, I went back walking with her to my house. Like I walked 2 blocks, and then I was back.
wow. I think if my wife heard this, she wouldn't. I don't know what she would do if just the concept of not being in the hospital
Yeah,
for 2-3 days, I think is foreign to so many of us. At least here in the U.S., I could say I can say that. But I think it's important, for people to hear that there are different ways of doing things, and there's no right way of doing things. There's the right way for you to be doing things, and
exactly.
considering where you were, that's what was done, and it's something that you embraced, and it doesn't change your love for your child because you have to give birth at home. In that sense, it's, if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if it does something to enhance it in a certain way. I don't understand that, but I could understand the concept of having a connection based on where and how the baby's actually born. So that's an amazing experience, and it sounds like in general there's been so many different things that you've been through, that I think has really enhanced you being a mom for who you are, for your two kids. Is that
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, for both of them. And I think that goes really, really far. I'm curious, as we sort of wrap it up over here, you know talk a little bit about what it is you're doing, the company that you started, and being a mom with that, and what that experience has been like, and where can people find the work that you are doing.
Yeah. So what we do is it's really help people reframe stress. And all the stress that we are experiencing after COVID is not going away. It's just accumulating and going up, and burnout is even worse now than before. So I think there's what we really do is help people reframe. How can you work into that stress and prevent so that you can really have that health to, especially for young parents. Um, how can you focus on your health so that you can be there for your kids? We're in social media. I think you can, um, with the links. But
I will put some of the links into the show notes over here.
okay, great,
You have
thanks.
Embers. Embers is the name of the company, and what you guys are doing from, I think the words I remember is burnout recovery, which I think are awesome words to use regarding what you guys do. And okay, and I think there are so many things that we can really talk about over here. The way I like sort of ending things regarding our conversation is asking some rapid fire questions. So if that's okay with you, we're just going to go through a few things over here. That being said, right before I start that, I think from the few different topics that we talked about today, from international stuff and just being away from home,
Yeah.
and working on things regarding making sure that we compartmentalize and we have our priorities, we have things that are the non-negotiables. Is there anything specific regarding those topics that maybe I didn't ask, we didn't talk about, that you feel might be something that you want to bring attention to for a minute over here?
So one of the things that is really important to mention is the boundaries.
It is.
And
What?
having
Yeah.
strict boundaries and being very disciplined about the boundaries is it's going to do miracles. And there's a lot of talk about boundaries, there's a lot of information about it, but the thing of implementing it is the hardest part. and understanding how boundaries can help you and can free you not only time, but really from that stress and that overwhelm of like having a million things to do from work and from home. And it's really gonna, draw the line to say where does it stop, and where can I find that peace and that sense of like being present for the family and for the kids.
Yeah, that's really, really important. That's for sure. I know there's a book of boundaries. I think it's by Cloud. It's a Cloud and Townsend. I think they talk about the concept of boundaries, just in general, not just regarding the home, but in so many different areas of life, and the importance of it. But maybe that's something we'll put into the show notes as well over here. But this has been absolutely awesome. I think so many things that I've learned today, and I really, really appreciate your time over here. As we're sort of finishing up over here, asking just a few short little questions over here. If you can think of the worst parenting advice you ever got, what would that be?
You cannot do it all, because you need to choose. Or you will be a mother, or you focus on your career, but you cannot have both things.
Makes sense. That makes sense. If you were to make a parenting book, what would the title be, and what would the topic be about?
How to make parents listen more. And it would be about like, we're always focused on making our child listen to us. And in this my case, getting frustrated when my child doesn't listen to me. But I think there's a lot of wisdom and understanding that we're missing, and like really understanding, listening to them. What do they need at the moment? How can you listen more to your child so they can listen more to you?
Yeah, that's an awesome topic. That's for sure something that I think we can all use more of. Is there something that you're either listening to or watching right now that you would recommend to others based on self-growth or parenting?
What's the very popular book about atomic habits? Even
James
though
Clear.
that's like,
We talk about him
it's
a lot here. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So it's not a very like a parenting book, but I think it really helps, like, even start with habits that would help you be completely, present with your non-negotiables, and start with the kids as well, like simple habits that they can learn and they can do them for themselves, from themselves. I think it has been very useful for me and as a
I
parent.
love it. That's great. Thank you so much for saying that. That's very, very validating to give that as an example, because I know that's something that we talk about a lot over here. If you could think of, last question for you now, if you could think of a superpower that you would like to have as a mom that would help with everyday mundane activities as a mom, what would that be and why?
A superpower, I think it would be, first thing that comes to mind, more patience.
You don't have to explain why. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Maria, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for a few minutes today.